knew the answer was out there. I knew it was out there, and I didn't know how far I'd have to go.
Welcome to the show, Rob Smith. Rob, I'm so excited to have you here today, and I want to share with the audience why why I wanted to have you on the show, why I wanted to have a conversation with you. And I have a real soft spot for people who are out there in the world creating new constructs, looking at things that maybe have been a certain way for a period of time and looking at how can we make this better? What else could it look like? What else might be possible? And from what I know of what you're doing in the world, what you're doing resonates with that. So thank you for being here. And I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit about you. What do you want them to know about you in this moment?
Sure. Thanks first of all for having me and reaching out. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to connect with you, both as a person, and then amplifying through your community. And just anyone who's listening, thank you for taking the time to listen. So, who am I? Like, that's such an interesting question. I like to, when I introduce myself, if I do a presentation, I start off with me being like, I'm a husband, I'm a uncle, I'm a entrepreneur, I'm a yogi, I'm a traveler, I like to like move through life. I say curious and humble is like my
Mm,
my way to move through life. Um, my mission statement is for myself is the same as the brand that I built, which is to challenge boundaries with humanity, to question the
mm,
way things are, to not can we find a better way? You say, talk about constructs. Like my goal is to help eliminate old constructs that don't work for us and
mm.
create new constructs that suit us, and maybe that means no constructs at all ultimately
Right,
that they just
right. I
disappear.
just got body chills on that one. Yeah. Do
They're
we
just
have to
like
have
not
boxes for everything?
we don't need body, maybe we need circles and they just need to be
Yeah.
bigger, or
Ever
they're
ever
like
expanding.
amoeba shaped, yes, ever
Right.
expanding. And let's see, for professionally, like I guess what I've done, I've spent most of my life in retail and fashion, and I merged my profession with my passion, which is social justice, and I created the Phluid Project, which is a multifaceted brand. Fluid itself is in the name. It's fluidity is the navigating easily between two spaces. Maybe it's even two
Yeah.
constructs to
Right.
move easily in and out. The pH represents balance, and the idea of finding balance in ourselves in any way possible. And I like to think about like one of the greatest balances is the feminine, divine feminine, divine masculine, and finding that in ourselves is a beautiful place and something that I strive for personally and try to encourage others to do the same. But yeah, that's a bit about who I am. I also serve on the board of directors at Steve Madden. I work with other companies as well, and I'm an educator, speaker, soon to be author, and
Oh, really?
yeah, that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It should be done the end of this year. Um,
Ooh, perfect
but just kind
timing.
of floating through life, just trying to do what I can to make a difference in the world through fluid, through um, fashion, through our Get Fluid Gender Expansive training program, helping companies prepare for a gender expressive, workforce and customer, and then the Fluid Foundation, which is our nonprofit where we've gifted over $1 million to grassroots organizations supporting the most at risk in our community. So that's been really fulfilling.
Mm.
So that's some of the work that I'm
Just
doing
a
right now.
few, just a few minor things that you've got going on in the world.
Just trying to
Speaking of
trying to
pH,
yeah.
speaking of balance, how do
Speaking
how
of balance,
how do you balance all that, all of those different
well,
interests?
it's such a great question. I I like to start my day meditating with meditation. I start my day with exercise,
Mm,
or some type of exercise, whether it's cardio or working out or yoga or all of it. And then I spend time thinking in the morning and writing and kind of setting, my day. And then I start taking phone calls around 10 a.m. But that's how I get it
that's
all done. And somehow, some way, we figure out how to do it all.
You know,
which
it's
is fun.
interesting that you say that because a lot of times with my clients, I'll talk about the setup. How do you set yourself up? Because if you set yourself up in the morning, if you get yourself in flow, if you get yourself, in the right aligned and in who you are, then everything else actually moves a little bit more efficiently. And a lot of times people say, I don't have time to take 10 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes. And I'm like, no, guarantee you're going to gain that time back with increased efficiency,
Guarantee,
right? And I think
guarantee.
that's what you're saying right there.
It is, and also like one of my favorite things to do is like if my body calls for a nap, and if I have time, even if it's 30 minutes, if I can just rest for 30 minutes, it's better than a cup of coffee or more caffeine.
Wow. Yeah. Again, chills. I had another guest on the show. We were talking about masculinity, femininity, no matter who you are, no matter your gender, but really being able to tap into both and being able to recognize when you need a little bit more. And we were talking about that being in that space where whether it's a bath, whether it's a nap, whether it is just more of that receptive state that then you can bring that in and connect it with going out and taking action later. Like you don't have to be taking action every single moment. In fact, you actually hurt yourself by doing that.
That's right.
Prevent
Even
because
superheroes slept once in a while.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, I mean, it's interesting. I would love for you to, before we went on air, we were talking about intentions, and I want you to hold up and share with the audience what you said to me when I mentioned that.
So yeah, before I have one of the things we have a fluid, and one of the categories is our scent collection, which is equal amount feminine and masculine scents. If you think about feminine being florals and fruits, and masculine being woodsy and earthy scents, and so, but also each of the scents is one of our values at Fluid, and so the intention is one of my favorites. So it's
Love it.
and it really smells, I say delicious, and so, but sometimes before I do like a conversation like this, and I think I sit down and I kind of settle my mind, and I think about the intentionality around this conversation, and I spray myself.
I love it. I
There
love it.
you
And I
go.
didn't expect it. I wanted everyone to know about that because, it's a great way of bringing other senses in, right? You can
Right.
say it, you can receive someone else's intention, you can write them out, but to have a smell associated with it, I think it's a really cool a new facet that I hadn't thought of. So, and I
It's
love
very
I love
tactile.
the
Yes,
synchronicity that you just happen to have that as one of the words and one of the things I really believe strongly in that we all can benefit by being clear about what our intentions are before we go into any conversation, anything that we do. So,
that's right. One of the things, I feel like sharing this because we're getting at that time, but people talk about New Year's resolutions,
mhm.
and this is a good time for me. I think about as I'm finishing the last month of the year, and I go back and I each beginning of a new year, a calendar new year, that I look at. Think about my intentions for the year, and I don't think of them as resolutions. I think of them as
Right.
intentions,
I do the same
and
thing.
that's so funny. And
Yeah.
it's better to rephrase it that way. That's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
intention. That
Yeah.
also like gives some softening. It's not
Mhm.
like a resolution is
Right.
so
Like you
resolute.
have to. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And so I was looking at and I break them into my mind, body, and soul, and try to
Mhm.
balance out like into different buckets, and just looking, to see how I did this year, and probably I'm scoring 50 to 60% of
Mhm.
my intentions, which is okay because then they
Just
just move over
right.
to the next year, or maybe they fall
Or
off. But
or
I
maybe
was,
they
I was yeah,
change, they can change over
yeah,
too. Yeah.
they evolve too. And some of them had been on my list for like 10, 15 years, maybe, and they just keep moving along.
Ooh,
And
now we all want to know what those are. You've gotten so much done in the world, Rob. Man, what's been on the back burner for 10 to 15 years? I'm just joking. You don't have to answer that.
no, it's a good it's a good question that I'll answer offline.
Yeah.
But no, it's just a good time to reflect on, just see like how was the year. I go through a couple times a year just to check in to see how I'm doing. But is that intention? And one of the point I was going to make was I like to think about putting my attention to my intention, and when you do that, it's much likelier that it will manifest itself if we do focus our attention on our intention.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
So, share a little bit about your story. I mean, you mentioned briefly as you introduced yourself about being in retail and fashion, and what the audience doesn't know is that you went through a point in your life where things dramatically changed. I don't even know everything that led up to that, and I would just love for you to share, what was happening within you that then had you take a big leap to, if I remember correctly, you were doing some massive traveling and self-reflection. So what was happening that kind of tipped things over? Because a lot of people listening may be, what I'm noticing, a lot of people are having questions about, am I moving forward in the way I want to? Is there something different, new that I want to bring in that I haven't brought in? Am I ignoring something that really matters to me, right? There is a lot of reflection and curiosity in the world right now about why am I here right now? What am I meant to do? So I'd love for you to share a little bit of your story, as much as you're willing to share with the audience about what pushed you to make a big change.
Well, I feel like I don't have to be limited in what I say in your podcast with your community, because I believe they may understand this journey.
Yeah.
So like long time ago, I'll give you, boy, um I was pretty, if I start with my professional career, I was pretty successful in retail and fashion. I fell into it by accident, which is kind of
Oh,
neat.
really? By
And yeah, I
accident?
like by accident, I was at university and I was planning to go work for Procter and Gamble, just like what we did in the Midwest. It was a good, solid organization, and
Right.
it was close by Michigan where I grew up. And then I get a phone call from a company called Burdines, and didn't know what it was, but I was like, sure, I'll take the interview. And they heard I was interested. They had a cancellation, and would I make it myself available at 3 o'clock the next day? So I rode my bike to the library for young kids. This is what we did. We didn't have the internet. We had to go to the library and pull out a book and find out what Burdines was. It's a department store in Florida. And I did the interview and did pretty well, I guess, and invited for a second interview in Florida. And they made me a job offer and I thought, what a great opportunity to get away from the Midwest, to get away from my family, knowing that I was time for me to come out soon. And I wasn't held back by all of the people that I knew, and I could break out free from that. So I decided to do that. And turns out that retail and fashion is something I'm really good at, and it was a natural
Yeah.
for me. And I moved very quickly up in the corporation, and at Macy's for 22 years. I moved my way up around the country and ended up being the head of buying for Macy's overall, which was a great job, and
Just a minor role.
it's a minor role. And then I left to go to Victoria's Secret to run Victoria's Secret Direct. Remember the catalog and all the Victoria's Secret clothes and stuff. That was really fun. And then I went to work for Levi's and Nike. I was the chief product officer for Levi's and Nike kids apparel accessories globally, which was a big job
Oh,
and
wow.
and
I
really
didn't know about the
stimulating.
Nike. I didn't know about the Nike part.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that was really cool. And then then there was a time when I went to my first Burning Man, and for anybody who's been to Burning Man or knows about it, there's lots of things you know about it, but experiencing it for the first time, it's overwhelming. The amount of the liberation, the freedom of expression, radical inclusion, acceptance, taking care of each other, taking care of yourself. But it was like we're 75,000 people come together. We talk about constructs and create a new construct, and
Yeah.
everyone falls in line. And I remember even the second day that especially some straight guys were coming into our RV and saying, "Hey, listen, I didn't pack right. Like, can I borrow some tights? Can you paint my nails? Can you put some glitter on my face?" And this liberation, especially from these straight men, and watching them just wear tutus on Tutu Tuesday, and just it was I was like, wow, like this is how the world should be. We should just be liberated to do whatever we want, dress how we
Right.
want,
To be
to
us,
just
right?
be it,
Express
to be
ourselves how
us,
we want to express.
joyfully,
Yeah.
joyfully, and without inhibition. And there's a saying, "Don't quit your job after your first Burning Man," but nobody told me that. So of course I
Oh,
came
oops,
back
you
and
didn't get that memo.
I didn't get that memo. I came back and I quit my job after my first Burning
Really?
Man. Yeah, and
So it was that quick. I mean, it was pretty
yeah,
immediate. Wow. Okay.
I thought about it for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I gave a 5 months
Wow.
notice.
Right.
And then I decided to travel. I tried to figure out what was next for me. I decided to travel around the world. with a backpack and one-way tickets to different parts of the country, the world, I guess. And
And
I
what
did
would you say your
central.
intention was with that, with the travel? What were
My
you?
intention was to find my dharma. I think was to find my dharma.
Mhm.
I don't even think I knew what dharma was, but I knew that.
Right.
But that when
Some,
I look at dharma, it's
yeah,
aligning your purpose and your what you're good at with the world, um,
like
what
your
your gift
gifts.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
And so
love that.
I thought I didn't know. I'm like, I only knew how to like make money for corporations and retail and fashion. That's all I knew. And so, yeah, I was living two lives. I was living my daytime life, making money. And then during the night, I was working a lot of philanthropic organizations and raising money and working to like support our community. So I don't know. I thought, well, maybe there's a way to merge the two together. Didn't know what it looked like.
Right.
And I ended up doing a month of ayahuasca in Peru, and that was pretty intense.
So when you say a month, what does that mean? Because I would say most people listening have if they have had an experience with ayahuasca or similar, it's maybe been a once or a couple times. So what do you
Yeah.
mean by a month?
Well, a month is every other night is a ceremony, and it was an intense
That's
program that
intense.
yeah, I don't think I was prepared for it. Actually, I know I wasn't. I wasn't. I just
You
I
said
was
sign me
referred.
up, right?
What's the worst that could happen? Like I really didn't like my only experience with ayahuasca was I forget what her name was, Chelsea Handler. She did an episode of she did ayahuasca and she said she just wished she loved her sister more, something I don't know what it was. I'm like, well, that seems
That seems,
pretty like
yeah,
yeah, why not?
sure, sign me up. More love. Yeah.
More love. Boy, it
Oh,
was
wow.
intense. The first one was beautiful and then they just became more challenging. But
Oh, wow.
a lot was revealed. I think the beautiful thing with ayahuasca is you learn about things about yourself that maybe you put in a box somewhere and
Okay.
it's buried deep inside. And it's certainly a path to understanding your true self and the things that the way you act and the you respond to things. The just the truth. It's a truth. It's a truth serum. And it's
Right,
whether you
right.
like want to know it or not. It's going to tell you. It's going to reveal itself. It can be beautiful. It can be challenging. But ultimately, one of the things that I learned after reconnecting with my younger self, um, I uh, I was a super creative young kid, and I loved art. I loved dolls. I loved music, and I loved hanging out with my sister. She was my best friend. At the same time, I had
Mm,
two brothers who were very involved in sports. My dad was a professional football player and was really involved in sports with them. And my
mm,
life wasn't, I had a loving family, but I just felt disconnected. I felt alone. I wasn't really life wasn't going great for me. So as probably many junior high kids felt. So I decided to reinvent myself and I went into and I started to play football and hang out with, the right folks and
You did,
life.
you did the things that the where, I mean, that's when it happened for me too. Sixth grade, I made a very conscious decision.
You
Oh,
did.
yeah, oh yeah. I remember, I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to be. This is how I'm going to fit in, right? And it just became a plan. And it's just like you're completely disconnected from you because you're making a
Right.
decision based on what you think other people, how other people are going to respond to you, right?
Where you become a performer of
Yeah,
the way
yeah,
that you think you're supposed to be. That's so
right.
fascinating. You also did the
Yeah,
same thing.
same
And
age.
life
Yeah.
changed probably. Like
Oh
life
yeah.
like got
Oh
better.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It did.
Yeah.
It suddenly, people on the outside were like, wow, she's this, she's that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you keep going on into your adulthood and you're like, this isn't working out. I
This
mean,
isn't working out.
for me, it took, I didn't do ayahuasca. For me, it took the death of my mom, but
Mm,
whatever it is that wakes you up and you realize, oh shit, I'm not
that's
living
right.
me. Right.
I'm not living me.
So you were
I,
successful, it
I,
sounds like.
so no, so what I tried to do, I love you saying that. I really appreciate it. One of the few people I've met who's done something
Ah,
similar. So I remember I've tried hypnosis, I tried therapy, nothing I could connect. I tried to connect with my younger self to apologize for leaving him behind.
yeah.
And then I went during the middle of ayahuasca during that time, I went down to the river and I took my clothes off and I swam in the river and sat on a rock and I started to just meditate and And all of a sudden, I started to just cry and sob. Like it's sobbing. And I curl up into a ball. And my little 10-year-old self was in there.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm so sorry I left you behind. I'm so sorry.
Oh my God.
And he forgave me. He said, I forgive you. He said, just make me proud. And and I stood, I was like, wow, like it was like incredible. So the next time I
Powerful.
go into ayahuasca and I say, what should I do with my life? What's my purpose? And the next morning I wrote in my journal, consider opening a gender-free, non-binary shopping environment. I wrote fluid in quotation marks, just like that.
Just like that.
And
Wow.
and and I said to somebody, they're like, how I read it to them, and he said, it's a great fucking idea. I think you should do it. And I opened the store 11 months later, the world's first gender-free
11
store.
months.
11 months later, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I mean, that's incredibly powerful, right? And what you wrote down, I mean, this is the thing I want to underline. Uh, the people who are creating what we're going to be living in the future are not bound by the current constructs. And sometimes what they say, at least I'll speak for the clients I work with, so they might say, this is what I see, right? Write something down like that in whatever industry, whatever, wherever it exists. And a lot of people won't be able to resonate with it because it hasn't been created yet. Now, the
That's right.
people who are on your team, who are your support, and that you get not only the emotional but also the more tangible support from, they're going to be able to resonate with it, even if there's not a blueprint exactly in their minds. That's what I
Right.
love. That's what I love. I mean, that's why I wanted to have you on here, because it's like you were talking about something that I don't know that at that. When was this then? How long has it been?
2017.
Okay, so I don't know if you went out into the general public and started talking about this. I don't know that people would conceptually
No,
understand. You had to create it in order for people to interact with it, right?
it's so funny. I had a clear vision of what it was, but nobody had ever done it before. It wasn't like Lululemon meets Reformation or something like that. It
Right,
was
right.
nothing meets nothing. It was, this idea of opening up a store, because I thought if I did it online, people couldn't walk by and see it and walk in and
Right,
touch it and feel
right,
it. And I thought that it had to be done visually, like in person with a
right,
store.
right,
And it turns out that people were super curious. It had never been done before. Nobody had ever created a non-gender store before.
right.
And then the merchandise was not easy to find. I created half of it. Then I worked to like create other parts with artists and creators who were small and doing it in a small scale, but I would bring
Right.
them in and give them a great platform with a highly
I love
visible
that.
space in Soho. And it was also two-thirds retail, one-third community space. And that space during the daytime was a coffee shop, and then like places to like hang out. And at night became, almost every single night, it was a bar,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
a event space with fashion shows and panel discussions and poetry reading. So it was more than a store.
Yeah.
It was
It's
a
like an
community space.
epicenter. Yeah, yeah, exactly. A
Yeah.
community that people can, that's beautiful. So what happened? Uh, What happened with, well, I'll get back to that. I want people to hear. So your journey, you came
So
out, this
so
was like
so
day what
so
on the,
what I would say is, like, what I ended up creating, my younger self would be super proud of and super happy
mm,
with. And I think that closure of kind of becoming one Rob as opposed to last
right.
that Rob and this Rob. And it
Yeah,
felt
a
really good
true
to
an integration. Yeah,
yes, a true integration, and doing something that I started, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I'm still really proud of what I do. And I think little Rob's proud too.
yeah. Well, yeah, you're celebrating him, he's celebrating you. I think
That's right.
both are happening, and all the versions in between too.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That I
So,
get to wake up as my authentic self and be my authentic
yeah.
self every day.
So you knew you were on a path, you knew there was something. I feel like you had pieces of the puzzle, right? And then it was in this journey that you went where everything came together and clearly came together and what you wrote out to yourself. I mean, that's a very clear.
Yeah.
A lot of people would be a little bit envious because they want that clarity on what their purpose is too. Actually,
That's right.
what would you say to that person who's like, well, I didn't get just a clear, I didn't get a clear sentence like that, mission like that. What would you say to them?
I mean, I don't know what to say. I don't.
You're like, I don't know.
Frankly, I'm surprised myself. I to have that whisper from the universe and that and to have that whisper, it's really powerful. Um, and to be that simple, and I don't know. I don't know what to say other than I don't know. Sometimes, yeah,
What I hear is
tell me.
you trusted, you trusted your intuition. You opened,
Yes.
you were curious,
Mhm.
and you set time and space aside to be able to allow. Those are some of the things that I hear that you said,
I
you
think
know?
you're exactly right. I knew that the answer for me was not sitting in this space, not sitting in, New York City, not sitting. I knew I had to, I knew the answer was out there. I knew it was
Mhm.
out there. And I didn't know
Mhm.
how far I'd have to go to
Right.
find it, but I knew that it was far from where I know. It was very far away. And I knew that, as I've always known it, that I can trust the universe that if I let myself set myself free from
Mhm.
all the people and things I know and try and throw myself into the universe, that the answers would come, that they have in the past, and they'll continue to do that when I'm looking for it. But it takes an effort, a conscious effort to break
And
free.
courage too, I hear,
Yeah.
I think what you just said about you trust, you trusted the universe. And I think sometimes, especially if people are in a career super successful, whatever their industry, and there's a little bit of a, oh, I don't want to let go of that because I don't know what else is possible. So it's a little hard. There's that courage piece, or that there's something in you that where you said, I trusted the universe. I wonder, do you know where that came from? If someone's like, well, I don't know. I don't want to give up this great career with this, great title, with this great regular income. But I think there's something else out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's the reason that your intuition and it is in, your chakra is right around your gut, and that's where
Yeah.
like that noise comes from. Like, it's poking at you saying it's time for
Oh.
change. It's time for a change. And change is scary. Change is hard. And I'll be honest, not having stability in income, something I'm not used to. I'm
Right.
reconditioning myself to live with the highs and the lows as opposed to
Right.
just those like nice salaries and bonus checks.
Right.
Um, and it's I the pathway, there's, I don't know, I just feel like we have to wake up each day and think about who we are, what we're doing, how we're communicating. And I don't think everyone needs to be as bold and as
Right.
outrageous as me. There's other ways to do it,
Right. Right.
but that was what worked for me, and maybe it worked for other
Right.
people as well.
Yeah.
Just to jump, just to like honestly like throw yourself off a cliff and hope the parachute kicks in, because
Yeah.
it will. The parachute will open, and it will
Well,
open.
there is that. I think one of the things, and I talk about this with my clients who are kind of in that space that we're talking about, right? That's usually who I end up working with. And there comes a moment where you start to think, if my life were to end tonight, tomorrow,
Hmm.
am do I feel, and people say it differently, but do I feel at peace with who I am moving, how I'm moving in the world, or who I am right now? Am I at peace with how I lived this life? Right.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's such an important question that I would say for myself, there were many, many years where I didn't ask myself that. And when I did start asking myself that, because my mom died suddenly, so it's like I suddenly was like, oh, you could be alive and playing tennis one day. You could be gone. Oh shit, what do I want to do with my life? Right? Am I
Yeah,
living my life or someone else's? Right?
yeah. Are you that sixth grader who's grown up now and
Yeah.
is still being
Yeah.
that
Right.
doing the thing that people want you to be. You know, there's always going to be responsibilities of family and
Right.
children, and I believe that every one of us can make differences in small or large ways.
Right.
It depends what calls you. Um, and not everyone needs to quit their job and, you know,
Right.
do something bold, but every one of us can ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I like to think that if all of us did that, if all of us
I
took
know.
that one step, whether it's a small step or a huge leap,
Yeah.
you know, the potential that we have
It's
to move ahead in a way that really is more a place that's really an accepting place of all people,
yeah.
and a loving place.
I
Um,
agree. I
yeah.
agree. And it is the small steps. Honestly, I for a while I worked on a palliative care team, and so I was in some pretty challenging scenarios with patients and their families, and then also with the physicians and the nurses who were trying to be support, right? So I was supporting the team and I was supporting the families and the patient. And one of the things that was so interesting was especially the physicians, there was a feeling that once someone had a particular diagnosis or they were at a certain point in their journey that they felt they couldn't do anything, right? But one of the most powerful things that they learned, at least in the work that we did together, was their presence, human to human.
Mm, hmm.
So important, so powerful. So to your, small choices, big choices, they're all part of it. So sitting, having a physician sit, look at the family or look at the patient in their eyes and be honest and truthful and be present with the grief, with the despair, and honestly
Yeah.
the love at the same time. It's a very small but a super powerful experience for everyone who's in there in the
Yeah.
room. And that's just being you. It has nothing to do with your degree. It has nothing to do with all of your all of the amazing things that you've learned over your lifetime as a physician. It has to
Yeah.
do with you being a human in that moment, in that space.
Yeah.
And the impact that it has is huge. So I think we all can do that, no matter where we are, in the grocery store line or in our cars driving or whatever it is,
For
right?
sure. It's even just seeing a stranger in the street and recognizing them, just, you know,
Yeah,
smiling and recognizing
yeah.
them, which is, I mean, I live in New York, like it doesn't happen. I'm sure it happens like in suburban America, but you
Right.
know, like people are surprised when I'm like, hello, okay, say hi in
Oh,
the
I bet
street
they're
and smile.
surprised in New York. You're
Like,
smiling?
and they smile back. It's so nice. And they smile.
Yeah,
It's amazing what a
yeah,
smile can do. But there, yeah, there's the small things and then there's the big things.
right.
And I'm focused on, you know, it's funny you talked about when your mom passed, or I guess what or your legacy is when you look back. I used to think I wouldn't be happy unless the New York Times wrote an obituary about me. Like then I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do enough in
Right,
life. And now I'm like,
right,
that's way too highest standards. That's way too like there are so many talented people.
right.
Um, I don't
Who
care
don't who
about that
don't get
anymore.
that? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't care about that. I think that that's like that's something that's I don't know, that's maybe that's ego. Now I just wanna, you know, I just want to look back at my life and say I did a good job. I think as
right.
much as I could. Maybe all of us could do a little more, but I did a lot. And I tried to be a really good person while I was on this planet and tried to help people think differently. And
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
and create space for people who are on the margins, you know, bring them to the center, let let their voices be heard and not make it about me. It's because it's not about me,
Right,
never about me.
right.
It's about us. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I mean, for me, doing this podcast is really my primary intention is to have conversations that elevate the vibration of humanity, right? Elevate the
Mhm.
vibration of the world. We're all in this together. And sometimes we can feel really, really alone and what we're challenged with, what we're struggling with. Um, and yet if we all can remember we're not alone and what we do and how we show up actually does make a difference. if we all look at life that way in our unique, in whatever our unique, scenarios
Yeah.
are, what might be possible for the world. And, I'd love to ask you, when you think about the industry, that you were very gifted in and that you've continued to explore and expand and push the limits of, when you look at the industry, the retail industry, what do you see? I mean, audience has heard a little bit about your specific, the Phluid Project, what you're doing, but as an industry, as a whole industry, what do you see as big potential changes in the future? You're smiling.
In
I
the
have a feeling
fashion,
you thought about it.
in the fashion industry, I mean, what I'm doing in creating a gender non-specific um collection of
Mhm.
whether it's apparel, accessories, scents, anything that I do, the first thing the challenge I run into is it for the men's or the women's buyer to look at. So there's always a buyer to look at, and then they
Yes,
think, even if they have the right buyer, then where do they put it on the floor? Because every floor, every website is binary male female,
right.
and even when I walk the floors and I look at the men's department, it's like dry fit polo shirts. It's like very like, and the women's floor is kind of all the same. And I think that, my pitch to them is just shave some off from both sides. You're not going to
Hmm.
lose anybody. There's like
Hmm.
so many floral dresses you can carry, or men's polo
Right.
shirts. Carve out some space in the middle. And they're like, sure, we can do that, but we don't have a buyer for that, or we don't have the floor space for that, or I don't.
Mm,
We have to figure out how to fit it into their box. So
right.
that's where
Well,
I
that's
think
the
the
structure, right? That's the construct that
yes,
exists right now that you're pushing up against.
that's right, and it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
everywhere, and I think, listen, those are very old formats. That's why the Fluid store was so interesting. People wanted to see what it looked like. Well, what does
Right.
this look like? What does it
Right.
feel like?
Yeah.
And I think that in order for retailers to engage with younger people, you look at the way thrift stores are doing, and
Oh,
that
right.
there's really
Right.
non-gender specific
Right.
areas, like you can
Right.
shop easily and just go
Yeah.
into a fitting room, pull something up a rack, are doing incredibly well. That if a retailer focusing on younger people can figure it out,
Hmm.
there's a huge potential and huge opportunity. Right now, young people are not as bought into the gender binary as other generations. This new
Right.
generation is willing to present differently.
Right.
It doesn't mean they're gay or queer or anything. They just how they present themselves,
Right.
and
Well, and
it's
I think about it as they're expressing themselves, right? Like
yeah,
they're more comfortable. They're more comfortable expressing themselves. I mean, I feel like me, you know, uh, who I am, and when I was growing up, I actually felt like I had to change my clothing to appear more serious and masculine. So I might have worn things that were not necessarily what I really wanted to wear in order to have, again, back to the impression, right? And what other people are thinking and being accepted and all of that stuff. And I think what I love about what you're talking about is it's a freedom of expression. It's not specific to any gender or any, like it's not, it's just a freedom of expression is what it sounds like to me. Does
that's right. That's
that
right. It's a freedom of expression, and it's done really intentionally, by taking male and female bodies and fitting the clothes and knowing how to design little details like raglan sleeve shoulders that don't have shoulder seams. Just like little design details, that using the right
interesting?
fabrics, not making it all about sweats, because that's like
Right.
that's easy. It's
Right.
easy to think about sweatpants and
Yeah.
sweatshirts,
Yeah.
but to create true fashion, and I think one of the most liberating things right now for me is to see in fashion and stylists and celebrities this like feminine approach, like blouses on,
Mhm.
and
Mhm. Mhm.
and I think it's like this like divine feminine that you can not just carry inside but also show externally. And it's the beautiful thing about fashion is is it's just right away it's a messaging to you about who you are, how you
Right.
feel, how you're presenting yourself.
Yeah, and
And
it's
that
definitely connected to how you feel. I mean, that's the thing. If you think about it, it's you feel differently when you put on different clothes. I mean, for me, even the fabric of clothes, like I can go into a store and touch, and I can rule out 90 something percent of any of the
Yeah.
items because I know they don't feel good on me. I don't feel good in them. I haven't even looked at the styles yet. I'm just feeling the fabric, right? But it's an expression, but it's also how you feel within it. So if you think about your industry, you think about fashion, and you think about going, going forward, what in 20 years time, what do you think, what's the best possible scenario?
The best possible scenario is that we start with the kids section and that we really work to degender kids apparel toys, that it's not done by gender, that that's much
Right,
less pink and blue, and not
right,
like, if you think about kids, like the girls section is, smile or love is the way, and boys are conquer, dominate, epic.
right, right,
And can we create a world where, especially because bodies aren't really like matured yet into puberty,
right,
can
right.
kids become like a more gender inclusive space around apparel, accessories, toys, those types
Mhm.
of things? Like companies have taken kids sections and done it by category, dolls versus boys and girls.
Right, right, right,
And then from there, can as we go into adulthood, there's still going to be somebody who addresses very masculine, somebody very feminine, but maybe words like men's department or women's department come down. It's just product that's
right,
feminine-ish
right.
in our definition,
Feminine,
but
yeah.
there's a space in the middle that people can find that is more expansive in presentation. So that's what I think is my hope.
How does that, I was just thinking, it's interesting when I was young, they didn't, I was very tall and I could not find jeans that were long enough for me. So let's say, maybe like 13, 14, 15 in that. I actually had to buy I had to buy Levi's in the in the boys men's section because they were longer. So you
Huh.
just made me think about, there are different I mean, bodies are different. I mean, there are tons of different female bodies, tons of different male bodies, and so how do you at the Phluid Project, I know you mentioned considering, cut and fabric, like how does that work? Because then you have so many more possible body shapes and sizes. How
Yeah,
does it
I laugh when people say like it's not possible to do what I do, and I
work?
ask women to stand up in a room and every woman to stand up, and I'm like, do any of you have the same body type?
Right, right,
There's larger breasts, no breasts, larger hips, bigger
right.
thighs, no thighs.
Tall,
Just
short, yeah.
exactly every person is unique, and you try to find something that's universal. But when we pick fabrics, they're very stretchy. They stretch in the
Okay,
right places. They
okay.
they you know
That
constrict
makes
and
sense.
expand in the right spaces. We do things that honestly, like women, I wore women's jeans for 2 weeks when I started to create a jean collection, our denim collection, and I realized women don't have any front pockets. They're like, there's no
That
front
work,
pocket,
that
and
actually work.
no, no, they're just
Usually they're seamed shut, or they might be little teeny tiny ones.
yeah, you can't even fit like a chapstick in the front pocket,
Right,
and the doing zippers that are longer, women's
right.
zippers are really short, and just but there's also some of them were
Interesting.
super stretchy and comfortable, and I'm like, why wouldn't a man like
Right,
this fabric? They were just so
right,
soft and stretchy, and so it's just finding these like things, and how do you take the best of everything and put it together to make something that's not for everyone, but for a lot of people.
right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, I mean, it's such a, I was just thinking, and the other thing that was just going on in the back of my mind was, what would let's say you go shopping not at your place, but let's go into a bigger, like a department store, right? What would
Yep.
it look like if it wasn't men, women, children? Like how would I know which direction to go in? More feminine, more masculine, or is this something that we haven't even identified yet as a way to, I don't even like to say categorize because I feel like I want to move away from that. But how do I know if I'm going into a department store and it looks different, let's say in 20 years, if we are even going to department stores at that point, I don't know.
True. Who knows?
But actually, there's so much more that could be happening. But let's just play with that for a minute. how do I know which direction to go into? How
Well,
do I?
I would merchandise the floor by your end use. Are you looking to go dressed up? Are you looking to go dressed professionally? Are you looking to go
Yeah,
casual?
I like that.
It's not, it
Yeah.
would be less about the gender and more about,
Where the
what's
purpose or
what's
where
your,
you're going. Yeah.
yeah. Are you
I like
going
that.
on vacation and want something,
Yeah.
like beachy, or I don't know, there's
Yeah.
something to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
interesting.
That seems like such a, I'll be around in 20 years from now, but what I'd like to do is start to create that space. Like,
Mhm.
I think I'm somehow the tip of the arrow right now in this, and the tip of the
I
arrow
think you are too.
is super exciting. It's really challenging. So you got to be ready to be the tip of the arrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the thing. You're the tip of the arrow. You're the trailblazer. Again, the world isn't set up to know how to interact because it's new. It's new information, and when it's new information, for some people it can be scary. For other people, they're curious, and that trailblazer needs to be prepared, like you said. So, on that note, you are the tip of the arrow. So, what do you do to maintain your ability to continue pushing that arrow forward? Because some people,
Mm.
it sounds very lonely and it sounds tiring.
It can be. But what's so much fun is along the journey is finding people that do understand it and they do get it and they do want to be like, maybe they're in a corporate job and they feel that they have more potential, but
Mhm.
assisting me and helping me navigate through their company, they're doing what they can do, and I value them for that. Like there's many people who understand what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and the hows and the not the whys but the hows is there's a lot of support from retail partners who want to try to help me
That's
figure it out,
that's
which is really
incredible.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really incredible. So you have a network of people who resonate with what you're
Yeah.
doing. And
Yep.
even if they
Yep.
don't have, like I said earlier, the blueprint of exactly what that would look like, they resonate with it and want to be a part of
That's right.
moving it
That's right.
forward.
And that's inspiring. So for the 10 no's that come through, the one yes, is really and it's visionary people. It's people who have young kids who understand
Right.
that the way things are set up are different than, and if somebody has a young customer in their store or wants a younger customer, they're going to want to talk about this and see if they can figure it
Right.
out. Yeah.
Well, and that actually, before we wrap up, I want you to speak a little bit to that because you do some work with companies that are looking for understanding this and playing with ideas on how to open up a little bit more to this. Can you speak to that work a little bit?
Well, we do strategic advising and education with companies, and the advising is not just around fashion or retail, but about the human experience.
Mm.
And we've moved really into this like weird space right now where a lot of focus was around identity. What about your
Mhm.
race, your
Mhm.
gender, your
Right.
sexual orientation, and there's this kind of pull back away from that. I'm not going to stop fighting. I think that the space right now is intersectionality. To embrace humans, and really it's about human potential. And what we try to talk to is in these is what's the potential in humans, but really what it comes down to for me is, can I help you identify a way to find more business? Can I help
Right.
you find a way to retain better employees? Can I find you a way to
Right.
recruit or retain better employees? So those are the conversations we're having. That I'm talking. I like to go in and talk to the executive team and talk about business opportunities. I like to
Yeah.
show them a space of business that's available, but nobody else is doing, and it can be yours if
Yeah.
you want it. Yep.
Yeah. I love that because you're bringing in, I mean, obviously from your successes in the industry, you're bringing in that the business piece. It's a business. Like ultimately, we
Yeah.
can't, like there needs to be that aspect of it. And at the same time, how does that where are the opportunities that are being overlooked, or where are the opportunities that you can be ahead of, right? Like get ahead of
Yeah.
the curve because this is what's coming down the road, or this is what's likely coming down the road, and you can set yourself up, you can set your business up to be in a better position than competitors.
That's
That's
that's right.
strong
It gets
strategic.
people's gets leadership's ears when you're talking about business
Yeah,
opportunity. That's why, how people ask how I differentiate myself from nonprofits who do similar type of education. I go, I'm a capitalist. I
yeah,
believe in conscious capitalism. I believe
yeah.
that finding a path to do more business is what's responsible for your employees and your shareholders, and that's what I'm here to help you with. And
Right,
that's
right.
how I find people find it interesting. It's not just doing nice; it's doing good for business.
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, I think also, um, you said there's a little bit of a pulling back from some of that initial, let's say, identity or gender, race focus. There's a little bit of pulling back. I kind of wonder if, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I kind of wonder if that initial approach into it was a little bit too much of uh, a boxed in is kind of what I'm thinking of, as opposed to a more inclusive meaning in so many different ways, right? Because every single one of us is different. We're not just differentiated by our race or our gender or, or our sexual preference. Like it's not, those are not the only, the only categories. There's so much more, so many different ways of looking at. So I kind of wonder if some of that pulling back is that it didn't quite capture the essence of really celebrating the humanness that you were talking about, that human.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are the idea of racial equity, of gender equity, that they still should be a focus. I think um, that it seemed like the approach was not, it was an instead of approach as opposed to an and also approach. It was a
Okay.
place
Yeah.
of scarcity versus abundance.
Right.
And it
Right.
was like, it was like a net zero type of
Right.
approach where if for this group of people to move forward, that means this group of people would lose.
Right.
And we're trying to reposition it that it's an and also,
I
it's a
love that.
place of, yep.
Yeah. I
It's
resonate with that.
it's not an exclusionary strategy. It's an inclusive strategy, and I think that the positioning was for me to advance. It needs to be at the exception of you, and I just think we need to reframe it and reposition it in a gentler way as opposed to
Mm.
that kind of aggressive
Yeah.
positioning.
Yeah. Yeah, I resonate with the word abundance in that, because there is a different feeling when you think abundance. It feels like there's so much opportunity. It feels like it's very open and possible, whereas the other feels a bit more shut down, a little bit more from fear or trying to
Yeah,
force something. So I think that's an opportunity in a lot of different, honestly, a lot of different areas to think about an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset, and the and as opposed to either or, right?
that's right. And I think that's where it plays out, whether it's in politics or anywhere else. When we focus on identities, like this is what I'll do for this group of people, this group of people. I think what kind of what's worked is this more generalist approach. It's not. Don't like the idea of picking on groups of people that are already suffering and marginalized to make you like some people feel better. But I do think that there's an opportunity to like rethink how is there an overall strategy that uplifts everyone as opposed to
Uplifts
certain groups
everyone.
of people. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because ultimately, I mean, really, I mean, part of my mission on this planet is to help uplift, right? In my unique and small way is, why not? Why not uplift humanity as a whole? You know, I
right.
mean, that's what might be possible then. Um, is there anything that I haven't asked you about specifically with the Fluid Project that you would want to share with the audience that you want them to know right now?
Well, I'd encourage folks to check out the website or our social platforms. We're queer centric, but not queer exclusive. I find that queerness allows people the permission to a break outside of traditional norms. You know, you're breaking through. Listen, 21% of Gen Z adults identify as queer, so it's becoming a real
Really?
breakthrough.
I didn't know that statistic.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a huge
Yeah,
number.
that's huge.
And their friends, if they're not queer, their friends are queer.
Right.
And
Right.
but I still think that there's queer and queer adjacent. That's who the Phluid Project is. I think
Mm.
we're equal amounts of fashion, community, education, activism, that we show up with all of these values and focuses. And you know, it's worth following. You know, it's nice to engage with us. It's good for you know, the more people
Okay.
engage and follow. It's nice to have people. It's I think I find us educational and really informative and entertaining,
Yeah.
and an insight into whether it's your community or not. And if there's a way to participate, if you're like, hey, listen, I know so and so, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just type in Rob Smith Phluid, and you know, reach out if you have any thoughts or questions, whether it's for fashion or education and training or the philanthropy. Just reach out to me. I'd love to. I like to take calls from people who have thoughts or ideas
Mm,
and support each other. You know, maybe
I
it's
love that.
how I can support
Yeah.
your community. I'd probably take 5 phone calls a week from people who reach out to me and have thoughts or ideas or questions or any insights I can share with them. So I'm pretty make myself very available
That's
to people.
huge. That's huge, Rob. And I know, and for everyone listening, you know, we connected via Brendan Dorian, Rarely
Right.
Heard Voices, at an event that you couldn't make, but you
That's
happened
right.
to comment on his post when I was at the event in London, and I saw what you were doing, and I thought, I want to know more. I reached out to you, and yes, he did respond. That's how he ended up on here. And I feel like I have this incredible, really interesting person in my life, and I'm grateful. And I just wanted to highlight that because you offered that, and I'm saying yes, he does respond. You know, now you'll have everyone will be responding.
No,
I'll be
well,
reaching
listen.
out, but
What's that's the worst thing that happened is that people reach out to me and want
yeah,
to connect. This is what it's all about. It's about
yeah,
supporting each other,
yeah,
and I'm grateful that you reached out to me. I'm grateful for the conversation about what did you say? It's elevating.
yeah.
How did you
So,
phrase it?
elevating the world's vibration.
That's right. As
Yeah.
soon as you said that, I said yes. Like that's basically what we're trying to do, you know, in
Yeah.
our own way, each
Yeah.
person in our own way. And you're like literally saying that's what you want to do. And if
Yeah.
I'm trying to do that in my own way, and I'm
Yeah.
sure your other guests are doing the same thing in their way.
Yeah.
But if we
Yeah.
all do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
change is inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you so much. Are there any last comments, words to the audience before we close for today, Rob?
Thanks for listening. If you stuck through this long, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. And to anyone who's doing what they're doing, the way you're doing what you're doing, the way I try to do what I'm doing with my community, um, that there's infinite possibilities by doing this.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Rob. I'm so excited about what you're doing in the world and how you're elevating the world's vibrations. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Peace.